Hi and welcome back. Today we're going to make a top hat. I have Thomas the avatar here and I'm going to delete his accessory, right clicking, and I'm going to change his avatar size using the avatar editor. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make his head size 21 inches, and that gives me a line here that shows exactly where we want the brim of this top hat to be. I'm doing this also because I have an avatar in another project that I want this hat to fit to. So I'm going to go with an ellipse to start with, and I'm going to pull out an approximate circle. And while that loads, I want this hat to be about, this brim to be about this size, and I'm copying this hat here. So we're going to use that to match up what we're doing. I'm just doing some guesswork to start with. So I'm getting it about the center. And if I bring it down, will that hat match up with the original? Might be a little big, but we're going to leave it for now. Okay, so before we cut a hole in this and before we do anything else, I'm going to make the scale front to back a little bit longer so it's more of the correct shape of a top hat, something more like that. Maybe a little bit further, and then I'm going to bring it up and we're going to simulate to the exact crown of his head, about right there. Here you want to be straight on so you can see how this shape goes. In the fabric editor, we want to select the fabric, and I'm going to change the type from fabric matte to plastic. I'm going to select the fabric in the 3D window. I'm going to come over and I'm going to change the particle distance to 5. And then I'm going to add additional thickness here. I'm going to go with 4. And then back in the fabric itself, I'm going to come to the bottom, go to the details panel. Here at the very bottom, I'm going to set the weight to 0, but I'm going to make the thickness 4, and this is going to allow this to drape. So if we simulate quick and stop, we start to get a circle there. I'm going to let it get to about that point. And then I'm going to select as close as I can to the center, indicated here with a chalk mark. That I'm in the center, and I'm going to rotate it about 180 degrees. And now we're going to bring this back over to about the center of his head and simulate one more time. Just a very quick stop and start, and that's about the shape of the top hat. Okay, so I think that works, and we can cut a hole for his head now. Let's go up, and in the internal ellipse about starts at about the center, and I'm just going to click once. I'm going to go with circumference, and his head is 21, but I'm going to make the size 19.5, and we'll see if that's enough. And with it entirely selected, grab the edit pattern tool, right click and cut. And that should be okay. Let's lower it into position now. We don't want to simulate this right now because it's going to lose that shape. And that should fit him about correct. Let's see. It cuts into the back of his head a little bit, so now we can reshape this hole. I'm going to just bring this in 1 notch. This one in 1 notch that way. And then bring the back out. There we go. That fits him good. And now I'm going to freeze that pattern. Okay, we want this exact ellipse for the top of the top hat. So edit pattern tool, we're going to select the entire circumference here. Trace pattern tool, right click, trace as patterned. And there's our top. Let's lower that into position, rotate and bring it down. This has to be about exactly where you want the top hat to be because we're going to eventually freeze it. So is this proportion about the same as the original? Pretty close. I also think the width of the brim is a little bit wide, and we'll fix that in a minute. However, This distance now can't change, so I'm going to lower it just a little bit because I think that's actually correct there. And it should be about the size of his face. That was what was in style in 1913. So in order to figure this out, I need to get the exact circumference here, and I think it was 19.5, but just to check, I'm going to select all of these again, and it's 19.065. So knowing that, I can make a rectangle that is 19.065. And the height, I'm going to say about 5 inches. And we can change that before we commit. So I have that in position. I think that's a little bit tall, so I'm going to bring it down and maybe up a touch. Perfect. There we go. So now we need to sew this together. The easiest way I can think of is using the MN sewing tool. So we want to start from the center of this, and I'm going to cut this in half, and that should give me the same on both sides. So now I have 9.533. There we go. That looks good. And so these 2 points correspond to one another. Let's start on this side first. And actually, before we do that, let's freeze, just in case we forget. MN free sewing. I'm going to start with the large size here, hit enter, and then I'm going to click once, drag across, click again, drag across, and do that side. Hit enter to finish. Let's do the same for this side. Enter to finish, and let's see how this lands. Not bad. So you can see from the side we do need to change the angle a little bit of the top piece here. So stop the simulation. We'll rotate backwards a touch, resimulate, and then reposition. Good. We can segment sew across the back seam here. And if we need to create a little easing for this afterwards, that's not a problem. We have enough fabric to do so. So now let's sew to the bottom the same way we did the top, using the MN free sewing. Making sure I have an exact center to start with. That looks good. And because I'm on the opposite side now, I have to make sure that my sewing goes the correct way. I'm orienting my camera so I can see. And that looks correct. Let's do this side. Hit enter to commit that one, and looks like we're going the correct way. Enter there. That looks good. And this is going to stretch the heck out of that fabric when I simulate. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to bring this top down a touch. I want to select this, right click, and flip the normal now. Now to get it off of his head and add a few more embellishments. We're going to select all 3 of these, bring them up. Because that top and bottom are frozen, we should be all right. And that looks pretty good. Let's now add that thick band around the outside. First thing I'm going to do is right click this one, and we're going to clone over. And then I'm going to grab the piping tool, and we're going to pipe this. So let's zoom out, and I'll do this in the 2D window, and it should pipe around both pattern pieces. If it does this kind of flip thing, just let it do what it wants and then come around here, because this is all one pattern. It should line up in the end. I'm going to select the piping, and over here in the piping window, the fabric we're going to use is the silk that I've chosen for the whole hat. And let's change the dimension to about 1/4 inch. Looks good. Okay, the last thing we need to do is add that silk band around the outside. So here on the rectangle that makes up the hat, I'm going to pick my internal line tool. Just simply cut and sew it. Select the bottom piece here, right click, and we'll layer clone over. And now let's add the colors for everything. I'm going to choose this silk for the gray silk for the main part of the hat, and then the clone over piece should have this here. And to get rid of these gaps, we'll go back over to the fabric itself and change the thickness back down to 0.5 or even 0.1. Since they're frozen, they don't have to be thick anymore. And there we go. Now we have a very cool top hat.